Where are all the Grishaverse fans at? Are you all up to date with the latest addition to the fandom? Were you a major fan of the books, but noticed that the show was a little different? If you love the new sensation that is Shadow and Bone, then keep watching. Whenever a book-to-TV adaptation is announced, every reader out there is equally excited and afraid of what TV writers and developers could do with their favorite story and characters. Did you know that viewers and readers alike have been eagerly awaiting the adaptation of Shadow and Bone for nearly a decade? That's right. For fans of Leigh Bardugo's book series, it's been a long wait, but surely after spending that much time on a show, it must have all been worth it. Not long after the show's release, it didn't take long for so many people have already spent hours devouring this 8-episode show, and the differences between it and the books certainly haven't gone unnoticed. But did these changes actually make the story better? Let's go through some of the major differences between the books and the TV show. Crows incoming. If you're a die-hard fan of the Grishaverse, then you probably would have spotted some familiar characters that are just a little out of place. Yep, while still set within the same world, Kaz Brekker and his gang are actually from Bardugo's standalone duology series, Six of Crows, which is a story that takes place after the events of the Shadowbone and the rest of the Grisha trilogy. So how does everything connect in the show? The decision to bring in the Crows this early in the story was actually a joint one made by both Bardugo and TV showrunner Eric Heiserer. While the book series was always popular, it was noted more than once among the readers that the story was just lacking something. However, the same thing cannot be said for the show. Having the Crows there really fills this gap, making the whole story bigger and far more exciting than if it stuck to just the one story like in the books. But then how do the Crows connect to everything? What about their own story in Six of Crows? Obviously, these are questions that have come up more than once since the show's release, and Heiserer has been quick to respond that audiences should treat the Crows story in the show as kind of a prequel to the story in their own book.
You wouldn't. No businessman worth his salt bargains for what he can take.
But was this a good decision? Do you think their story adds something fresh to the show? New girl in town. With all the buzz around Alina Starkov, the new fantasy heroine, some fans may not have noticed, but she's not entirely the same as she was in the books. It's clear that a lot of thought has been put into this series, and deciding who would take up the role of Alina was apparently not an easy task, especially when the showrunner decided to change the character's whole heritage. When trying to find ways in making the show more inclusive, Heiserer decided to bring some culture to the role and make the protagonist half Chinese, and he did this before even casting the leading role. When asked more about it, he said casting half Chinese Jessie Mai Li to play Alina, who was white, or Ravkan in the original story, gives the show opportunities to explore the social dynamics of its multicultural fantasy world. And that it does. Alina's mixed-race Asian background also just makes the clear divide between the different people in the Grishaverse all the more tense. Like any show trying to keep up with the times, Shadow and Bone is trying to be diverse while also telling a job story. Do you think it works for the better? Oh, he of many names. Have you ever noticed that it always tends to be the villains who have to go by more than one name? Like Voldemort, who just wasn't satisfied by being called he who should not be named. And for Shadow and Bone, the Darkling is no different. Aside from the fact that in the series, he's first referred to as being called General Kerrigan. Whether or not you've read the books, it's kind of become common knowledge that the character of the Darkling goes by many names. One thing fans were quick to notice was that it only took 4 episodes for him to reveal that his real name is actually Alexander.
Please, call me Alexander.
When in the books, this little detail isn't revealed until way into book 3, so why let it know now? Does learning someone's true name really make that much of a difference? According to the online world, the decision was actually made to first refer to him as General Kerrigan instead of the Darkling in order to conceal his true identity for as long as possible. While the majority of viewers have at least heard of the original book series and have a vague idea about the story, they probably won't have connected the dots that the Darkling, the Black Heretic, and the General Kerrigan are actually all the same person. And for those viewers going in completely blind, what a twist. Different past, same him. Sticking with the character of the Darkling, or General Kerrigan if you'd prefer, it has not gone unnoticed that in the show, we seem to know a lot more about his past than we do in the books. In fact, the majority of his backstory was actually created for his character in the show. While in the books, the reader gets little snippets here and there of what life was like for him as a child. In the TV show, his past is literally seen through a series of flashbacks, and audiences are given the chance to learn that the Darkling actually has more reasons for his actions than it appears.
I have no army to fight yours, so I shall remake yours as my own. Submit to me!
Spoilers if you haven't seen the show or read the books yet, but the Darkling is actually responsible for creating the Shadowfold and the Volcra. While in the books, it becomes clear that he does this out of pretty much because he's a power-hungry bad guy with a bit of a bad childhood, but in the show, there's just so much more to it. Audiences get to find out just how hurt the Darkling was when all the Grishas he swore to protect were dying at the hands of the Kingsmen, and in his fury, he accidentally creates the Shadowfold. Oops, bit of a mishap there, but by this point in the story, his character has already started down the path of darkness anyway, so what's the harm in keeping the Shadowfold around for a bit? While it's clear that this decision of giving him more of a backstory made his character more sympathetic and easier to relate to, do you think it was the right call? Does adding a backstory really add that much to his character? The unrequited love triangle. While Shadow and Bone has been praised for its complex but brilliant storytelling and well-rounded characters, there are just some tropes which apparently never got out of fashion. Enter the love triangle. One thing fans of the books will remember is how much Alina actually loved her best friend Mal, but more in the romantic sense than you know, just being able to love him as a best friend. The whole will they won't they thing became quite the point of the tension in the books, along with Alina's blazing romance with the Darkling as they start connecting on levels she never did with Mal.
I've been waiting a long time for you.
But how is this chosen to be used in the show? Well, fans can be reassured that the love triangle hasn't been taken out. It's just been altered here and there to make Alina a much stronger character with a little more power over these boys than she had in the books. But don't worry, there's still plenty of reasons for you to be either on Team Mal or Team Alexander. Speaking of Alexander, the writers seem to have decided to soften his character in more ways than one, as he seems to be genuinely warmer and more affectionate towards Alina than he ever was in the books, even if she's the one to initiate their first kiss. Round 1 to Alina. But fans on Team Mal can also rest easy as he's still within a fighting chance. While his character is liked in the books, readers took note that there were several scenes where Mal was just straight up rude to her. Whereas in the show, he's far more likable, giving fans all the more reason to root for him.
Talks about you all the time.
What does he say?
Oh, well.
But don't listen to these two. They like to exaggerate. That's what they do.
Look at him! Oh, he's so easy to rile.
Hey? Is that annoying you?
All right, come on then, you bastard.
Showrunner Heiser also made the decision to include several flashback scenes of Alina and Mal during their time together before Alina is taken away. This definitely helped raise Mal's popularity, as instead of just knowing how Alina is feeling about everything, we get to things from Mal's perspective too, letting us see a softer and more vulnerable side to him. And come on, who doesn't love a character who's all soft and loving on the inside? A new way to die. Remember how big the winter fete scenes were in the book? Well, hold on to your hats, as this action-packed evening is an even bigger deal in the show. While still acting as the big coming-out party for Alina and the Sun Summoner, in the Netflix show, it also becomes the perfect big event which allows Alina to escape the little palace after finding out about the Darkling's true, darker nature. But as with any secret escapades, Alina needs a little help to make it happen. Enter Marie, the decoy. While Marie has always been one of those side characters who has important moments, but isn't really anything to do with the overall plot, it doesn't mean she hasn't got the potential to become more important. In the show, the writers actually took her character and made her a pretty essential part of Alina's escape, given the fact that she was literally being her decoy. But what did this mean for her character? While in the books, she dies in Book 2 during an attack by the Darkling, in the show, she dies after helping Alina escape, making the whole purpose of her character far more important. Do you think people care more about her character in the show? Was her earlier death worth it? So what do you think about the TV show compared to the books? Do you prefer Mal's character on screen? Do you think Alina is stronger than she ever was in the books? Are you Team Alexander or Team Mal? Let us know in the comments below.